This is not about charity in the end, is it? It's about justice. The good news yet to come. I just want to repeat that. This is not about charity, it's about justice. And that's too bad, because we're good at charity. Americans, Irish people are good at charity. We like to give, and we give a lot, even those who can't afford it. But justice is a higher standard. Africa makes a fool of our idea of justice. It makes a farce of our idea of equality. It mocks our pieties, it doubts our concern, and it questions our commitment. 6,500 Africans are still dying every day of a preventable, treatable disease for lack of drugs we can buy in any drugstore. This is not about charity. This is about justice and equality.
Bono spoke eloquently of justice to the assembled elite of Washington at the National Prayer Breakfast. And it as well he did. Justice is central to the Bible's understanding of governments and the public policies they pursue.
To understand justice in public life, it is first important to understand two truths the Bible teaches us. One is that God has established governments. The Bible teaches there are three institutions God has established: marriage, the church, and government. Proverbs declares, "By me kings reign and rulers make laws that are just." And Paul in Romans writes, "There is no governing authority except that which God has established." A second truth the Bible teaches is that God established governments in order for them to promote justice in a world that no longer is as it is supposed to be. When the Israelites, after wandering in the desert for 40 years, were ready to enter the land God had promised them, God gave these instructions to Moses: "Appoint judges and officials for each of your tribes in every town the Lord your God is giving you, and they shall judge the people fairly. Follow justice and justice alone, so that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you." Clearly, the Bible teaches governments have been established by Him in order to promote justice. But all this still leaves a crucial question. What is justice?
Justice is giving every person his or her due. And that means that in doing justice, we need to give people what they have coming to them. And normally that means that we owe them good things. But if they have violated laws, if they have ruptured relationships, then justice also means to repair things, to restore things, and even in some cases to engage in punishment of people who have done some things that they really owe some kind of penalty to the rest of society. When we don't pay people a proper wage, that's not giving them what is due to them. When we don't tell the truth to people, we are not giving them what is due to them. St. Augustine once said that we even owed our enemies compassion when that's the appropriate thing. And so there's a lot of stuff in the world today that is out of balance. And to do justice is to restore the balance. It's to make things right again.
An idea closely related to justice is the common good. If a government is truly seeking justice for all its people, the common good, not the good of certain narrow special interests, will be advanced.
I like to think of common good as being, we're all in the same boat together. As the people of God, everybody is God's children, and so we try to work with one another to ensure the best for all God's people. Looking out for old number one is the opposite, really, of the common good. And I think, especially in modern American culture, we're so inundated, I think, with whether it be messages from Hollywood or from corporate advertising that plays on some of our weaknesses in this area. And as Christians, we are part of a whole different culture that we're reminded of every Sunday, and hopefully beyond that in our personal devotional time, that we're really about a higher sort of perspective and calling, and that our drive in life isn't just to realize our own personal gain or to reach our own personal goals, but to work for all God's children.
But what exactly does all this talk about justice and the common good have to do with us as citizens and voters? This is what I like to call the so what question. And this is my response. In our actions as citizens, as we vote, as we express our opinions, as we sign petitions, we Christians should support public policies that advance justice and the common good. Of this I am certain. But I must quickly admit, this answer only sets us on the right path. It does not lead us home. What remains to be answered is this question: how can we, in specific, concrete situations, determine what positions support the common good or justice?
Common good is it's a very lofty idea, but what I think people struggle with is that you can talk about the common good and espouse the common good, but take education, for example. If someone said that a kid born in Michigan is going to get a better education than a kid born in Mississippi, people would say, oh, well, we should have equal education across the United States of America. But then when a politician stood up and said, now give me your tax dollar and we're going to ship some of that off to Mississippi and improve the standard of education there. Whoa, wait a minute. You're going to take money from my kid's school? And suddenly the idea of common good goes right out the window.
Neither here nor elsewhere in this video series am I going to proclaim boldly what justice or the common good means in every and all situations. The world is too complex, and my own wisdom too limited to attempt that. The important thing is that we as Christians seek after justice and the common good as best we can, learning from each other and applying what insights God has given us. Perhaps we can begin that process by considering several examples.
For 15 years, a controversy has raged over a 43-foot cross on city property at the top of Mount Soledad in the San Diego area. Some groups have gone all the way to the United States Supreme Court to force its removal. Meanwhile, many Christians are vigorously fighting against its removal. Now take another issue. Several years ago, the Evangelical Environmental Network issued a statement that read in part, "One consequence of our misuse of the earth is an unjust denial of God's created bounty to other human beings."
Here we have two issues, one involving a large cross on public property and one involving environmental pollution. What do you think? Do both issues involve justice and the common good? Does neither one? Or maybe one does involve justice and the other one does not? To answer these questions, we need to ask if one or the other more fully and clearly involves whether or not people are receiving that which is due them as God intends. Equally sincere Christians may disagree on the answer they give to this question, but the question is the right one, and the one we as Bible-believing Christians ought to be asking. Let's take another example. In 2003, the governor of Alabama, Bob Riley, who is an evangelical Christian, urged a tax reform package on the basis that the Alabama tax system was unjust.
Fairness and justice as applied to taxation, and that's how I got pulled into all of this, requires more from the most of us if your system is out of whack. That message is about as well received as you need a root canal next week. I think it's very, and I've often been challenged in churches. Now that's wrong, Professor. Because the church is charitable, and we're giving and we're loving, and we make an A in charity. And I said, yeah, we sure do make an A in charity, and we make an F in justice, and it doesn't average out to a C.
I think that an unjust tax structure would be one in which one segment of society pays a disproportionate payment compared to another.
I think to some degree, those of us who can afford to put more money into our tax structure should do it, and we should do it with a willingness that we're helping everybody.
I think both sides have arguments rooted in justice. What's the fair distribution of taxes?
So my own, conception of justice, the way I would feel about it would be a way to get each side paying the same percentage of their income.
I guess personally I'm not opposed to a progressive tax system, but I do think it's hard to make, bright distinctions between just and unjust. There, I think there's a case to be made for both sides in terms of justice, and probably we should. It's hard to make it just purely a moral issue because of that.